This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ying.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Spirit Guides Radio, where we provide a fresh modern voice to ancient wisdoms by charting new maps for old souls. Each week we talk to leading spiritual voices to explore what it means to live a spiritual life in the 21st century. We discuss everything from astral travel to mediumship and aura fields. So sit back, relax, and get ready to level up your soul. Here's your hosts, founders of Spirit Guides Magazine, Arizona Bell and Morgan Garza.
Oh my gosh, it was so hard to hold in all our giggles before.
We got the giggles before we came on, you guys. It was really good.
And it's our producer's fault. He started giggling, and when Cameron giggles, we're all giggles. So that was hard to hold in for like that. How you doing, girl?
I'm doing good, girl. How you doing?
Doing awesome.
Yeah.
I was just thinking this. We weren't talking about this before, but the full moon just happened and everybody's talking about that. And like, I feel like there's a split, like from regarding the past 3 eclipses and then this full moon. Some people are like, oh my gosh, it's so great. I feel so light. And some people are like, woof, this full moon. But I feel great. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel great. I feel like it's always pretty polarized like that. But with Mars direct, I think that in general, a lot of people have felt a lot of lift, a lot of woosah, a lot of like wiping the sweat off the brow, like, oh, thank the Lord that we are moving forward again.
Well, I agree. And I feel like for people who don't believe in astrology, it's like, what else is there? Because it's like, it just makes everything so much more sense. Like, because I could have just thought I was just like slow moving turtle, depressed this summer. No, the minute Mars went direct, I was like, okay, bring it on.
Well, and it's like now we're integrating all those lessons, and I feel like there was a huge, I don't know, there was a stagnancy, but now there's just this clarity and forward moving. It's like we were in a marathon and now we're in a sprint. I don't know. Feels
right.
Good.
Right. Yeah. It was like the summer, at least from, definitely my personal feelings, but from what I've heard from other people too, like affirming this, like the summer of confusion, sluggishness, just like people are like, I just want to nap all the time. And like, I'm not a napper. Me, I wake up at 5 a.m. I'm a crazy person. And I'm just like sleeping. When I was in Denver, I slept till like 10, 9. Like I was just like, and like even here, I'm just sleeping. Why is this? This is not me. Am I like, do I have a disease? What's going on? Nope, I don't have a disease. It's just the frickin' planets. So
I think it's so nice to like allow yourself to do that though and not be hard on yourself. And like this goes out to everyone who was going through the shitstorm of this summer and didn't even realize maybe what was going on or just kind of felt a little bit sluggish, but like let yourself sleep in, let yourself go to bed early, let yourself take a nap during the day, and let yourself not finish that thing because you're only pushing yourself and you're going outside of what you're actually really wanting to do. Like I am pretty good at doing exactly what I want. And when I force myself, I see that like not good things come out of it. And so I'm not going to push it anymore.
You really are good at doing exactly what you want. You should write a book on that.
But I always get everything done. And it's like, I feel good about it and I'm not stressed and I never get like crazy about, of course there's certain times, but I just really feel what I'm feeling. And then I do what feels best.
Right, and you do what you can. You don't freak out if you can't do it all. I'm going to butcher it, but there's an Emerson quote that's basically like, do what you can in the day and be done. Like, don't carry it out with you, Anyway, this is going into a direction.
Big lesson of the summer. Do you, boo-boo? Take a nap.
Do you, boo-boo? Nap time. Yeah, and honestly, that's what I did. And for me, it was really weird as a person that's go, 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 work, 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 ideas. It was like reflection, inward, sluggishness, sleeping. And now it's like, duh, I had to do all that. I had to really go in and like tune in and just refine everything. And now it's like, it was like Monday. It was like,
Well,
okay.
and if you don't do that, you're learning the hard way and you're pushing yourself and then you're stretched too thin and you're even harder on yourself because you're not getting done when you want to, or you're so tired that you can't even think. Like, don't go everything the hard way. Like, just listen and do things that would be easier for you to get done and to just chill.
Right. I mean, even think of like spirit guides as the entity and how much transformation it has gone through just in the past 3 months this summer.
Yeah.
Just by us tuning into it and listening to both of ourselves, internally, and how much, just like everybody else individually, as spirit guides, as a company, we have shed so much that wasn't serving us. And we have focused on what is and what we really want to do and how we really want to help people. And boom.
And look, here we are, a few days away from opening the doors to the Cosmic Collective after months of work and reflection and shedding and refining and course correcting and course correcting and course correcting.
Are we on course now?
We're on course. I feel
Okay.
like the click into alignment,
We are totally on course. We have so many people in the collective and they're all awesome. And I mean, maybe this has something to do with what's going on in the stars too, but I've been like crying in our Facebook group, like all the things people are saying and interacting with each other. And
well, you just realize that so many people have incredible stories and so many people have colored past and have come so far to be where they are now and really are doing the work and gathering these people together and having them converse with each other and connect and say, I hear you, I see you, I feel you, I am you, I've been there, is just beautiful. Like, we didn't anticipate this. We wanted to create something that we wanted to be part of for like live readings and personal and spiritual development, but this
Community.
is obviously so much bigger than that.
yeah, the community aspect is just like better than we could have ever hoped for, and we're so lucky to be a part of it. And so yeah, we are launching on September 1st officially the Cosmic Collective, which is this Saturday, and we're going to launch with a bang. We're going to be doing live readings with Natalie Miles, who's a spiritual medium and is awesome, fun, everything. She has a British accent too. I mean, if you're into that.
So
I
you
am.
feel
It's so
real
cute.
posh about your spirit guides.
Your spirit guides are posh as fuck. So we're doing that. So we're launching on Saturday. So that means that the last day to sign up for the 50% off pre-launch price is this Friday, August 31st. At midnight, we'll call it Pacific time.
Yeah,
We have to sort that out, but we'll say
to-do list.
yeah, to-do list. We got to do all that. So we're going to say August 31st, Friday, midnight Pacific time is the last time that you can sign up for the early bird price. You can sign up
50%
afterwards
off.
anytime, but why sign up for 50% more? And like
And you guys, this is like chock full of amazing things. We've got readings, courses, Q&As, workshops. People have like PDFs that they're sharing with us for their workshops for you to learn even more and take home like homework. And there's also obviously, like we've been talking about, incredible community building. It's just,
not to
wonderful.
mention, I don't know if you've listened yet, but we were delivered our exclusive meditation audio from Worthy Stokes, and it's all about finding your life purpose and embodying it and getting into alignment. It's like 35-minute guided meditation. It's awesome. Yeah. And so all of this, you guys, for $11.11 per month if you
Until
sign
Friday.
up. What?
until Friday.
Until Friday, if you sign up by Friday. Then it goes up 50%, so it'll be $22.22 a month, etc. So if you're familiar with how pricey readings and courses and workshops are, that's pretty good. That's an organic salad, guys. That's an organic salad a month.
Once.
So if you have any interest, I really do think that you should listen to your intuition and get on it before Friday, because we don't want you to pay more than you have to.
And come join us. We want to meet you. We want to know your story. We want you to meet the other people in this group. We want to develop together. We're going to be in every single session with you guys, doing the homework, doing the work, shedding the tears, having the victories. Like, we're there.
And my favorite part, I mean, obviously there's so much about this, it's going to be cool, but my favorite part is that people are like, hey, I live here. Like all over the world. We have Australia, Germany, Vancouver, United States, obviously, like, and people are like, hey, I live here. I live in Ohio. I live in Michigan. I live in California. If you're ever in the area, come see me, come stay with me, I'll show you around. And like for a traveler, like that is huge for me. I'm like,
Yes,
yeah,
please.
yeah. So yeah, it's all good. So that's really exciting. And yeah, so the Cosmic Collective, we hope that you get on the starship.
Yeah.
Other than
spiritguidesmagazine.com and click on Cosmic Collective. It's in the top bar navigation. You'll see it. You'll love it.
that
Do
part,
it.
directions.
Right. We always
Spirit
forget that.
Guides Magazine.
I mean, they could find it, but they're just a little assistance for you.
Right. And so other than that, there's we have an awesome episode for you today. I mean, I think that I have been so excited about this for so many reasons, but one of them is because as I've said before, I am doing both a solo presentation and a panel presentation at the Afterlife Research Education Institute Symposium September 13th through 16th. So in like 2 weeks, I gotta get I gotta get that presentation done. Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. I'll be wearing black for sure. I'm gonna be sweaty. Yeah, Morgan's gonna be there, just like helping me keep my nerves together. I hope, but
making weird faces at you in the back,
like you're doing great,
laughs,
giving me thumbs up. But so anyway, back to like this what am I saying? Show today. Our guest today is going to be on the panel with me, and this is George Norrie's panel, which is a big deal in the paranormal spiritual world. So George Norrie is going to have a panel. There's going to be about 6 of us on it, and including myself and our guest today, Dr. Walter Simcoe, and he is a reincarnation expert. And I've been so interested in reincarnation. I read the book Old Souls by Tom Schroeder. I'm so excited to have our guest on today.
Me too. And this is something that affects us all. We're all reincarnated.
Well, are we? We're going to find out. So let's not wait any longer. Let's bring him on. Dr. Walter Simcoe is a board-certified physician, which is awesome. He's also a reincarnation expert. He's the author of Return of the Revolutionaries, The Case for Reincarnation and Soul Groups Reunited, among other books. And this is a pretty big deal. This is pretty big praise. Neurosurgeon Dr. Norm Shealy said about his book, "For the survival of humanity, this is the most important book written in 2,000 years." Okay, cool.
Okay.
He is the president of reincarnationresearch.com, and his Evidence of Reincarnation video has more than 6 million views. So you guys, we're pretty stoked and honored to have him on today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Simcoe. Am I saying your name right, first of all?
You're doing great. Thank you.
Great. Simcoe. Okay. How are you doing today? Welcome.
I'm doing great.
We're very excited to have you on with us. So again, everybody, his website is reincarnationresearch.com, and we're going to dive into everything, all of the questions that you might have in your head, they're in our head too. So we're going to dive into that. Before we dive too deep though, I'm wondering if you can kind of tell us, I know you're a physician, a board certified physician. So how did you get to be a reincarnation expert? Like, what did that path look like for you?
Well, actually, it all happened on a lark. I was doing my occupational medicine residency in Chicago, and a friend of mine said that a trance medium was working out of a local metaphysical bookstore, excuse me, and that this medium channels your spirit guides, and that I should go have a session because this is a really great medium. Well, at the time, I didn't believe in psychics or mediums, but it was winter in Chicago. There wasn't much else to do. And I went, pretty much for entertainment value. And during the session, first of all, the way a trance medium works is they go into a meditative state and basically leave their body, and they allow spirit beings to utilize the body to speak to human beings. And when this happens, when the spirit guide comes through the trance medium, the voice changes, the mannerisms change, facial expressions change. It's almost like there's a totally different person sitting in front of you. And 2 spirit guides came through. One of them said that I was here, that this was a universal guide given to those who have come into life to make a statement. And then a second guide gave me more specific information. To make a long story short, in the session, the guides seemed to know things about my family life, which I couldn't understand how they would know. And they said that they saw me as a physician, not just in a physical sense, but as in a corporate sense. And I had told them nothing about me. And though I was in occupational medicine residency, I really didn't know which career path I would take. But indeed, I became a corporate medical director. So that kind of perked up my ears. Then they told me about two past lives, one in the time of the American Revolution and one during the era of Louis XIV. And then they said, do you have any questions? So, I asked the important question, like, when am I going to find a girlfriend? And then after that, I asked, well...
Number one, first
as
of
everyone
all.
would like to know.
I love that.
And who was I in the American Revolution? And they told me that if I researched John Adams, I would see myself in physical attributes and characteristics. And I thought they meant that if I researched John Adams, I would see myself in his circle. It didn't occur to me that they were saying I was John Adams, but that's basically what they affirmed. At the time, I thought that was pretty crazy. I had heard that psychics tell you that you're somebody famous because that's what people want to hear. And I thought it was, far-fetched to think that I had been John Adams. I mean, I was not interested in politics, and it just didn't compute. And so I did nothing about it for 12 years. And then as part of my job at Unical 76, Union Oil Company of California, I had a territory which included Hawaii. And it was 1984. I had met with managers, and then we were going to go have lunch at some restaurant, and they said, let's meet in the parking lot in 10 minutes. So I was the first one there. It was midday. I was wide awake. I was standing up, and out of the blue, this booming voice in my head said, study the lifetime of Adams. And it was like there was a megaphone inside my skull. It was that powerful. And that never happened to me before, and it's never happened since. But it got my attention. And that night I went to the bookstore in Honolulu and got books on Adams and the American Revolution. And I did find that in some portraits I looked exactly like him in terms of personality traits. They're the same, both good and bad. And then as I continued to research his life, I identified a whole bunch of people in his lifetime who seemed to be reincarnated in my lifetime. For instance, John Adams' brother, Peter Adams, is a dead ringer for my brother, George. And John Adams had a very good friend who took care of the Adams finances when they traveled. His name was Cotton Tufts. And Cotton Tufts is a dead ringer for my other brother, Leo, who is an orthopedic surgeon. And Cotton Tufts, by the way, was a physician. So I was kind of developing this soul group that seemed to have reincarnated from the American Revolution to contemporary times. And that included people in the 2000 presidential election cycle. And on my own, I figured out who George W. Bush was in a past lifetime, and Bill Clinton and Al Gore, and they were all players in the American Revolution. It took me about 5 years before I got the courage to talk about this publicly, because I didn't want people to think I was crazy. I had to make a living, and I didn't want to lose my job.
Right.
People thought I was unbalanced. But a corollary of this is I started to learn everything I could about reincarnation research. And that's really the most important thing. I mean, whether I was John Adams or not doesn't really matter. My first book, Return of the Revolutionaries, is all about that path. But in the process, I became an expert on evidence of reincarnation. and began to go to conferences and meet people who had similar stories. And I've compiled all these cases on our website. Probably the most important researcher in reincarnation was a man named Ian Stevenson, who was an academic psychiatrist at the University of Virginia. And in fact, he was the chairman of the department. And he was a mainstream psychiatrist, but then he had heard about children who had spontaneous memories of past lives, whose memories could be objectively validated. And so he got interested in this and started to research these kids. And then Chester Carlton, who invented the Xerox process, he also was interested in this topic, and he endowed the University of Virginia with $1 million. And this is back in 1960. So
wow, that's a lot of money in 1960.
$1 million. And so with the stipulation that this money was to be used exclusively for Stevenson to research reincarnation cases. And that's what he did. For 40 years, he traveled around the world studying young children who had these spontaneous past life memories. And in the typical Ian Stevenson case, as soon as the child is able to speak, they start talking about a past lifetime. And typically they tell their parents, my name is not the name you're calling me. My name is so-and-so. And you're not my parents. My parents' names are so-and-so. And this is not my real home. My real home is in a village called so-and-so. And in the end, the child gives so much detailed information that the biologic parents can actually locate the past life family. And in these cases, the reincarnation occurs usually in fairly close geographical proximity. So the biologic parents are able to locate the past life family. When the child is introduced to the past life family, the child can identify all the past life family members by name and relationship, know things that nobody outside the family would know. And the past life family typically accepts the child as the reincarnation of their deceased loved one. And Stevenson studied about 2,500 of these cases, and in over 1,500 of those cases, the past life identity was objectively validated.
Wow.
Yeah, and from the series of 1,500 cases, we can establish what I call principles of reincarnation, which allow us to understand how reincarnation works. And there's 10 of them. And one of them is that people can look the same from one lifetime to another. There's evidence that souls plan their lifetimes to be reunited with people that they've known before. That people can change religion, nationality, and ethnic affiliation from one lifetime to another. And this principle is really why I'm passionate about this work and built the website, because I realized that if people understood that they can be Jewish in one lifetime, Christian in another, Muslim in another, and vice versa, people would stop fighting about this. Most wars and conflicts are based on differences in these cultural markers of identity. So from my point of view, evidence of reincarnation will transform the world to make it a much more peaceful, harmonious place. People can also change gender from lifetime to lifetime. Talents are carried through, which explains child prodigies. There are even suicide cases where a person had suicided in the prior lifetime and then reincarnated. And there's also the phenomenon of what I call split incarnation, where one soul can animate more than one physical body. And I discovered a case on my own that showed that, a case where lifetimes overlap by 29 years. But Ian Stevenson also has these kinds of cases, which he called cases with anomalous dates, because the lifetimes overlapped. And then finally, the cases show that spirit guides or spirit beings actively intervene to help reincarnation cases being solved. And one thing I'd like to mention is on our website, reincarnationresearch.com, where reincarnation research is one word, the cases are categorized by these principles. So on the left-hand side of the website homepage, you'll see physical resemblances, planning lifetimes, change of religion, and so forth. And when you click on the category, all the independently researched cases that demonstrate that principle appear, so people can read them themselves. And the power in these cases really is the amount of detail that these little kids come up with, which is phenomenal. And I mean, there's no way in the world that these little kids could come up with all this information without some explanation such as reincarnation.
Right. And I think that's what, like, you hit it on the head there. We were going to ask you, I know Morgan wanted to ask you about why so many of these cases are, that are being studied are with little kids. Like you said, you realized your thing with John Adams, but the little kids, it's like, they're not crazy. They can't make this up. And also they're clearer in their memories from past lives when they're younger, I would assume. Is that correct?
Correct. And the people at the University of Virginia, I mentioned Ian Stevenson. Ian Stevenson died in 2007, but another academic psychiatrist by the name of Jim Tucker has taken over for him, and he's continuing this research on little children. And they chose only to focus on these childhood past life memory cases because they thought, adults, they can read history, they can confabulate and, make stuff up. But, a little child, they're innocent and naive, and they're just much more believable.
And
Right.
so do they forget the past life information that they have as they grow older? Is it something that always stays with them? Is it case by case?
No, it does fade. So on average, in these 1,500 cases at the University of Virginia, the child starts speaking about the past lifetime when they're about 3 years of age, and the memories fade when they're about 7.5 years of age.
Okay.
That's interesting. And here's another question that just popped into my head. It's kind of a dual question, but in countries or areas of the world that more believe naturally in reincarnation, such as Hindu cultures and stuff, I guess my question is do you find, or does the research find that it's more prevalent in those areas, or the cases are more prevalent, or is there any correlation?
Yes, and in fact, the majority of Ian Stevenson's cases do come from countries where reincarnation is accepted. So India, Asia, where there's Buddhist or Hindu cultures. But there are some very important American cases. Probably the most important involves a boy named James Leininger. And James was born in the San Francisco Bay Area, but his father got a job in Louisiana with an oil company, and so little James grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana. Well, what happened is he started to have terrible nightmares and would start screaming out in the night, airplane on fire, little man can't get out. And his parents would run into his bedroom to see what the commotion was about. And his mother said that when she saw him, he was like kicking at his sheets, and it looked like he was trying to get himself out of a coffin. And they would then ask him what's going on. And, he would explain that he was flying a plane, and his plane got shot down by the Japanese. The parents said, "How do you know it was the Japanese?" And he said, "Because of the big red ball, which is the emblem of Japan." They asked what kind of plane did he fly, and he said a Corsair. He said the Corsair veered to the left when it took off, and then when it would land on a plane, which meant an aircraft carrier, the tires would blow. He said that the Americans called Japanese fighter planes by male names, so fighters were called Zeeks. He said that the Americans called Japanese bombers female names like Betty's. And, he's like 3 years old. And his parents realized, he's not learning this stuff from Sesame Street.
Nope, I hope not. Goodness.
Mr. Rogers, lock it up.
Yeah. So his father, Bruce Leininger, was totally resistant to this being past life, or these being past life memories, because he was actually an evangelical Christian and even belonged to the Evangelical Christian Businessman's Association. So, this was really going against his belief system. But he still decided to research, and he found that everything that his son was saying about this information regarding World War II aircraft in the Pacific Theater was true. Everything he said about the Corsair and all that was true. And they asked him, "Well, where did you fly from?" And he said, "I flew from a boat." "And what was your boat's name?" And he said, "The Natoma." And sure enough, his father found that there was an aircraft carrier in the Pacific called the Natoma Bay. And he said, "Well, what was your name in when you were a pilot?" And he said, "James," just like his name in this lifetime. And to make a long story short, Bruce was able to actually identify who little James was in the past lifetime. And the way this happened is Bruce got a book on ships of the Pacific Theater in World War II and battles. And when they came to the Battle of Iwo Jima, little James said, "That's where I died." Well, that's specific information. A pilot who died in the Battle of Iwo Jima who flew off the Natoma Bay. Well, there was only one pilot named James, and that was James Houston. And they were able to contact little James Houston's surviving sister. So the pilot's surviving sister. And she lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they were in Louisiana, but they got this surviving sister on the phone. And so this little boy, James, has a conversation with this woman who's now 70 or 80 years old. And he came up with so much detailed information about their family life, the Houston family life, that Ann Barron, the surviving sister, accepted little James as the reincarnation of her deceased brother. And the kind of information he told Anne was that their mother's name was Daryl, which was true, that Daryl had matching portraits done of James Houston and Anne, that their father was alcoholic and had to go to rehab, that they had a sister named Ruth, which was true, that Ruth was 4 years older than Anne, which was true. And so she, based on all the specific information, accepted this little boy as the reincarnation of her dead brother, and in fact sent him all of the surviving artifacts of James Houston.
Oh my God, that is
so
wild.
Fascinating. So
wild,
have
yeah.
we all reincarnated? Is that something that you can say definitively, or is that not something that you can say? Do we all have a past life?
This kind of brings us to a second part of the work that I do. So, you know, a major focus is on these promoting the evidence of reincarnation produced by Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia. Another thing that I do is I work with Kevin Ryerson, who's probably the most famous trance medium in the world. And the way that this came about is, you know, back in when I started to look into the John Adams thing, you know, that started in 1995, and I studied for about 5 years, you know, the lifetime of Adams, before I started to gain confidence that this may be real. But I still wanted some more verification. So I started to meet with about a dozen psychics here in the San Francisco Bay Area to see if I could find somebody who could help me understand which past life cases that I encountered were valid and which ones weren't. And nobody I met with could do that until I met Kevin. And Kevin channels this spirit guide named Atun Ray, who he says he last lived in ancient Egypt 3,500 years ago. He was a high priest under the pharaoh Akhenaten. And since that lifetime, he's been sort of assigned to Earth to monitor what goes on. And he's being channeled through Kevin, he says, as a service to society. And you know, my first focus was trying to get assessment of the reincarnation cases I had derived through Atun, which were correct and which weren't. But I still didn't know for sure that Atun had this ability. But that changed when I started to ask about past life cases where I had no hypothesis. And one of the better examples is I mentioned that I had derived all these American revolutionaries who had reincarnated in the 2000 presidential election cycle. Well, one person in that group, Ralph Nader, I had no hypothesis of who he could have been in a past life. I assumed he was probably part of the American Revolution because the rest of his group was there, but I had no idea who. So I asked Atun, and Atun said yes, he was a major player in the Continental Congress. He said if I find his portrait, I'll see he has the same facial features. And then I asked, what's the name? And Atun said the name is Thompson. Well, again, this is specific information. Continental Congress, a guy named Thompson. And by this time, I had a whole library on the American Revolution. And I looked through all my books, and I could find nobody by the name of Thompson. And I almost gave up, but I gave it one more try and went to the San Francisco Public Library. And I went through every book that they had on the American Revolution, just going through the indices, looking for a Thompson. And in this old book published in 1935, there in the index, it said Thompson, Charles Thompson, portrait of Charles Thompson. And I turned to that page, and Charles Thompson is a dead ringer for Ralph Nader.
Wow.
And then I learned now that I had the full name, I was able to find more information on Thompson, and I found that he had the exact same personality and interests as Ralph Nader. He was an advocate for the underdog, advocate for Native Americans, and the history books. If he happened to be. The reason I couldn't find him is he was not a representative to the Congress himself, but he was the secretary for the full 13 years of the Congress's existence. And you might wonder, well, if he was there that long, why wasn't he once elected to be a representative himself? And the history book said that Thompson was too radical to be elected, just like Nader.
Just like Nader.
Yeah.
Man.
And so in working with Atun, I've been working with Kevin and Atun Ray on a monthly basis since 2001. And Atun Ray has demonstrated this ability over and over, where I will ask for somebody's past life and he'll tell me the name, and many times I will never have heard of this person. But then, I research it, and when I can find the person in history, everything matches. Same face, same personality, same talents. So after a while, I realized, and Atun Ray has an encyclopedic scope of information. And Kevin Ryerson, who I know very well now, does not. And Atun Ray has a completely different personality than Kevin. And he speaks in this kind of deep Egyptian accent. So I came to realize I have contact with this extremely intelligent spirit being. And I thought, well, I'm going to now ask him the bigger picture questions, like why do we reincarnate and all that. And that's what my book, Origin of the Soul and the Purpose of Reincarnation, is based upon. My dialogues with Atun Ray about these questions. And so, that your question was, do we all reincarnate? We can't really answer that yet based on evidence. I mean, based on evidence, we can say for sure reincarnation exists. But, the question, does everybody reincarnate? You can't answer that from the evidence so far. But the kind of questions that the evidence can't address, I have asked that of Atun Ray. And basically, yes, we all reincarnate. He explained that all souls were created about a nanosecond after the Big Bang, that when we were created, we were all imbued with a certain set of talents and energies. I call it like an energy spectrum. And that's why in cases we see that artists come back as artists, writers come back as writers, politicians come back as politicians, and so forth. And so we reincarnate, first of all, to develop identity. I make the point that what if you had no memories? You'd be in the present moment, but without memories, without a history, you don't really have an identity. So one of the reasons we incarnate is to have experiences, have memories, so we can have a solid self-identity. Secondly, we need to develop these God-given talents. And then thirdly, Atun Ray said that, and also you have to work off karma in the physical plane that you created in the physical plane. So if you did something bad to somebody in a past lifetime, you have to reincarnate to atone for that in some way. After you do all that, the last thing Atun Ray says is you have to develop a all-encompassing love for humanity. And once you do those things, you're done. You don't have to reincarnate anymore. You can continue your evolution in the spirit realm, though you can reincarnate again if you want to help out humanity.
which is very similar to the Buddhism or Hinduism with bodhisattvas and exactly. So I guess they're pretty on point, guys.
They know.
But and actually, what I had asked about bodhisattvas because in reading about Buddhism, I got the impression that bodhisattvas are extremely rare, and you think of people like Jesus or Buddha or somebody, but Atun Ray said that actually 20% of the people on the planet today have reincarnated voluntarily, even though they didn't have to again try to help humanity evolve.
Wow, that's incredible. That's an incredibly high number.
That is.
You guys are probably bodhisattvas yourself.
Hey, that's so nice. Takes one to know one. So this is so much information, and we only have a few minutes, so we want to make sure that we ask our most important question that we have today for you, and that is, who was Donald Trump in his past life? You sent us that question as a potential, and we were like, "Yep, we gotta know."
Yeah. So the person who derived this one or proposed it is a fellow who's on our website identified as the reincarnation of the actor James Dean. And, now he's very much into reincarnation. And he wrote to me and he said, I'm really sure about this, that Donald Trump was the Emperor Nero. And in a session with Kevin Ryerson, Atun Ray agreed, and there are parallels. Nero was blamed for the fire that burned down Rome in I think it's 64 A.D., and which may have been a false accusation. But anyway, after that happened, Nero built this huge palace that extensively featured gold leaf, and in fact he called it the house was called the Golden House. And Trump has continued his building passion, and it's known that in his apartment in Trump Tower he used gold leaf extensively, so patterns persist. And then everybody's been puzzled about why Trump has this affinity for Vladimir Putin. So I asked that recently in a session with Kevin, and Atun Ray said, because I assume they must have some past life connection. And Atun Ray said, well, they were both emperors. And then he shared that Vladimir Putin was Julius Caesar. And he said that if I look at...
Damn.
Yeah. Anyway, the facial resemblance between Trump and Nero and Putin and Julius Caesar are right on.
Wow. That is crazy. And for anybody who doesn't know, Nero's rule is usually associated with tyranny. I'm reading here right now.
I just Googled.
That's another actual fact.
And narcissism.
What's that?
And narcissism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, wow. That was our big question, and that is... insane. Wow.
Just on a quick Google search and looking in the images, there are images of Emperor Nero and Trump together already. So
no way. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Go to the image section.
Well, I'm gonna after we wrap up this show. I can't do two things at once.
Whoa.
That's probably from our reincarnation research website.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense.
Totally. Well, very cool. Oh my gosh, Walter, this has been so incredible. So I don't know. Morgan, do you have one last question for him? I have a million, so I can't really narrow it down.
I mean, so knowing that we all have come from a reincarnation and that we're here to work through karma just in ourselves, is there anything that we can do to kind of amplify that or to help ourselves along in our reincarnation?
Well, basically, have compassion for people, do the right thing, think of yourself not as a Christian or Jew or Muslim or Hindu, but as a human being who reincarnates in these different cultural networks, and see yourself as a spiritual being rather than just a meat puppet, as they say. and do the right thing and try to help other people. And we have to love one another.
Don't be a tyrant. That's the summary of that one. He's gonna be coming back for a while. He's got a lot of work to do. Well, this is great. Everybody, again, we've been talking to Dr. Walter Simcoe, and his website is reincarnationresearch.com. And there are so many cases on there. I mean, I was browsing through today, so much research. I mean, you've even got stuff about Helen Keller, Taylor Swift. My mind's blown. It's just, there's so much on there. And I definitely recommend going there and looking into Dr. Ian Stevenson as well. I've done that in the past, and it's all right there. There is evidence for reincarnation, and we appreciate so much the work you're doing, Walter, and for coming on and sharing it with our audience.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And on that note, Morgan.
My mind is blown.
Arizona, I'll see you in Arizona.
Right.
And Morgan.
You will see me in Arizona.
Yeah, Walter, we'll see you there.
Everybody, me and Walter and I should say, are going to be on George Norrie's panel. And if you don't know who George Norrie is, where have you been? It's going to be awesome. And yeah, Walter, I will see you there. I'm so pumped. And everybody, you can still get tickets to come. It's September 13th to the 16th in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can come in person. They also are doing a live stream and watch on demand for a much cheaper price. If you're somewhere that is anywhere else in the world, you can watch 8 of the keynote presentations, which does include the panel that Walter and I will be on. So you can go to afterlifeinstitute.org for all of that information. Thank you for reminding me that, Walter. That's going to be so fun. Minus how nervous it's going to be for me, but it's going to be awesome. We're going to have a great time. And what we got going on, Morgan, next week?
Next week, we have someone that we're very excited about. She's also writing a digital guide for us on this topic, which is going to be a very fascinating read for many people. It is. I've been editing it. It's very fascinating. It is. Once it's released to the world. We're going to be talking to Jordan Catherine Pagan about cultural appropriation, which is a very hot topic in today's world, as we are really seeing ourselves drawn to different cultures that and rituals and everything that we may not have stemmed from. So we're going to learn how to properly tap into this ancient magic and how to do it appropriately and with respect to where this ancestral knowledge came from. So I know Arizona and I are really excited about this, and it's going to be a very interesting.
Well, it's a hot topic for a reason. It's not something that everybody wants to address, especially privileged people, and it is coming up more and more in the spiritual world. So we thought it was appropriate to have on somebody who could talk to it, and it's going to be, the guide's awesome. It's already changed my way of thinking about things. So really, really excited to bring it out to the world in general, and then have her on next week and just talking about it,
and it's something that I think that we're all guilty of doing. If you've ever burned a bundle of sage in your house or anywhere, that's cultural appropriation. So we're just going to learn.
Well, not necessarily burning it
better,
depending on where you buy it, is what I've learned. I don't know. We'll find out from the expert next week. That's the thing. Even in her guide, she says, hey, she's a woman of color herself, and she's guilty of cultural appropriation. So it's not about
pointing fingers.
It's not about pointing fingers. It's not about guilt. It's about awareness and how we can all do our spiritual practices without hurting other people. And often, another thing she says, I'm giving this all away now, but another thing she says is that, of course, most of us don't go intentionally practicing spiritual practices to offend or hurt anybody else. So it's all about awareness. We're good people, we're in this realm, and it's all about bringing that awareness into your spiritual practice. And we can think of anybody better to be on our show and to write a guide for us. So we're super stoked.
Boom.
So we're done. We're out of here. Again, the Cosmic Collective deadline for 50% off is this Friday at midnight, August 31st. So if you want to get in on it, go to spiritguidesmagazine.com and look for Cosmic Collective in the navigation. And hey, we're going to catch you on the flip side.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for listening to Spirit Guides Radio. To learn more about Arizona Belle, Morgan Garza, or Spirit Guides Magazine and all its magic, Visit spiritguidesmagazine.com.